I think it's time my useless sister stopped pretending she's an entrepreneur, my brother said into the mic, swirling champagne like he was christening a ship. Everyone laughed. Even Dad. Even my ex. My name is Bryant, he beamed. I just made senior VP. And I'm making my first acquisition tonight, my sister's little failing business. You'll sign it over, right, sis? I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there in my thrifted black dress, holding a wrapped gift I'd spent 3 days making by hand, a carved wooden replica of the garage we used to play in as kids. I thought he'd appreciate it. My name is Claire. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been humiliated so quietly, so publicly, you couldn't even cry? They had it all planned. Dad nodded like a CEO, approving a merger. You'll finally have a stable life, honey, he said, like I was a child asking for crayons, not a woman who'd built something from nothing. The room was filled with clapping hands and expensive watches. My mother's portrait stared down at me from the mantel. She would have flipped that whole room upside down. She believed in me, but she died before I could show her the blueprint of my dreams. I left without a word, just slipped my gift onto the table and walked out. No one stopped me. No one followed. The air outside was cold and honest. I sat in my car, engine off, listening to my own breath shake in the silence. My failing company had paid for Dad's surgery last year. Brian didn't know. I never told him. I never told anyone. Because I don't build for applause. I build to survive. They thought they could humiliate me, then inherit what I made with my blood and insomnia. But that night, something broke in me. Or maybe something woke. Because the next morning, when they came to take over, the locks had changed. And the world they thought they owned was no longer theirs to conquer. They showed up at 9 a.m. sharp, Brian in his pressed navy suit, Dad in his golf cap and entitled stride, expecting keys, control, and coffee. But the front door wouldn't open. I watched from the second floor through tinted glass as Brian rattled the handle like it was broken. His voice grew louder, more irritated. Claire, open up. You're making this harder than it needs to be. My phone buzzed with his text. Let's be civil. We're doing you a favor. A favor? Like erasing years of sacrifice was a kind gesture. Like stealing someone's soul work was polite. I never responded. My name was never on the lease. On purpose. Because I'd learned early that men like Brian, golden boys who never failed, who never bled, only respected what they couldn't own. But the business license, patents, bank account? All mine. Hidden under layers he'd never think to look through. LLCs under maiden names. Clients who'd signed NDAs that even Dad couldn't break with his lawyer friends. And the building? I didn't own it. But Evelyn did. My mentor. My former professor. The woman who invested in me when I was broke, eating rice and expired peanut butter. And Evelyn had just one rule. Burn your bridges if the village is on fire. I saw them pacing now. Brian called the building manager. Dad called a lawyer. I called no one. Instead, I sent one email, short, sharp, strategic, to every one of my vendors, clients, and staff. Effective immediately. All correspondence regarding Claire West Studio will go through me only. Unauthorized persons approaching the premises are not part of this organization. They tried to act fast. Brian's lawyer sent me a cease and desist, citing verbal agreement of transfer. I printed it, laughed, and fed it to the office shredder. Then I posted something simple to our socials. A picture of my desk. And one sentence. The Queen is wide awake. Let's build. That day, I learned something powerful. When they call you useless, they're terrified of what you'll become once you stop needing their approval. The first rail shot came from Dad's lawyer. A thick envelope with a golden seal, hand-delivered to my office, as if formality could mask the betrayal inside. They were suing me. Breach of verbal contract. Unlawful withholding of family assets. Failure to disclose company valuation for intra-family acquisition. I read it twice. Then laughed. Family asset? I had built this company with second-hand tech and sleepless nights while Brian was drinking bourbon on Ivy League rooftops, calling me a dropout embarrassment. but they wanted to bury me in paperwork, make me fold from fear. Except they forgot something. I'd already lost everything once before. And I'd survived. My name is still Claire. And I was done apologizing for building differently. By noon, I had my lawyer, a woman named Tanya, whose voice could freeze a judge. She read the paperwork, then looked at me and said, "They want war. Fine. Let's make it biblical." We responded the next day with a counterclaim. Intentional defamation. Emotional distress. Attempted hostile takeover. We attached every email, every text, including Brian's smug message. "Don't make this messy, sis. I'll let you keep the website or something." I used to cry over words like that. Now I use them as weapons. The legal battle lit a fire under everything. Clients called, furious that they'd tried to replace me. One investor even asked if I wanted help scaling, not selling. Meanwhile, I heard Brian had begun bleeding money. His own startup, the real one he bragged about at parties, was tanking. Something about misreporting projections. Investors pulling out. Still, he held press interviews pretending he'd soon be acquiring a boutique brand run by a family member. He didn't say my name, but I saw the fear in his eyes. Because he knew. I wasn't the dropout anymore. I was the threat he couldn't control. I posted one more thing that week. A video, no music, no captions. Just me, walking through my office, holding that wooden gift I made him, the one he never opened. And I said, "Some people build empires from stone, some from fire. But me? I built mine from every time he laughed at me." The walls were closing in on him. Brian tried to play the polished executive, but cracks were showing. His startup, a flashy fintech clone with recycled jargon, was exposed in a leaked report. Inflated user data, fabricated endorsements, misused grant money. I didn't leak it, but I knew who did. Evelyn had friends. In high places. People who remembered how Brian mocked her at my pitch meeting 3 years ago, called her another retired feminist trying to stay relevant. She never forgot. Neither did I. Still, I stayed quiet. That's the thing about real power. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It waits. My name is Claire. And from wherever you're watching this, remember, silence is not weakness. It's strategy. Brian's investors began pulling out like teeth, one by one, until he was left with nothing but a name he could no longer afford to trademark. And that's when he showed up. Not in my office. At Mom's grave. I was already there, every Tuesday. I sat with her, told her what I was building, what I was surviving. Sometimes I cried. Sometimes I laughed. She always listened. But that day, I heard footsteps. Brian stood behind me, suit wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. "I didn't know you still came here," he muttered. "She believed in me," I said without turning. He sat. Didn't speak for a long time. Then, "I was jealous, Claire." I finally looked at him. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. He looked like a man who'd finally seen his own reflection without the applause. "You had nothing, and still made people follow you. You didn't even finish college. And somehow people trust you." They never trusted me. They just wanted what I could deliver. I nodded. "That's the difference, Brian. I built something real. You built a stage." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then stopped. And then, for the first time in our lives, my brother said something honest. "I'm sorry. I didn't forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever." But I stood, left a white rose on Mom's stone, and whispered, "You said I was useless. But I turned your insult into gold." Then I walked away, heels clicking on the earth, my shadow longer than his apology. I thought that would be the end of it. But men like my father don't back down. They regroup. Brian may have broken, but Dad? Dad still believed titles made truth. He summoned me to his country club. "No lawyers. Just family," he said. I wore black. No jewelry. No makeup. Just my silence and my spine. He smiled when I arrived. That same condescending smirk he used when I was 12 and dared to say I wanted to run my own business. "Claire," he said, like he still owned my name. "You've made your point. Now, Let's fix this before more bridges burn. I sipped my water. Which bridges? Yours? Or the ones you never let me cross? His face tightened. You've embarrassed your family.
Publicly.
What you're doing is surviving. I cut in. And thriving. On my own. Without your approval or your funding. He laughed, cold, empty. You think because a few clients stick around and your brother stumbled, that makes you a CEO? No, I said calmly. The $1.8 million contract I just signed us. His glass froze halfway to his mouth. Tech design for a national retailer. I continued. They saw the article on your attempted takeover. Thought I was scrappy. Dad's eyes narrowed. Claire.
No.
You don't get to Claire me anymore. And that's when I did something I never thought I could. I stood up in that overpriced dining room, surrounded by old men in pastel polos, and I told my father exactly what he didn't expect. You raised me to think love was earned by obedience. But I've learned love doesn't live in permission. It lives in truth. And the truth is, you never saw me. You saw what you wanted me to be. And when I refused, you punished me with silence and shame. The table behind us went quiet. He looked humiliated. Good. I leaned in one last time. Soft, controlled. Like a woman who'd stopped bleeding from old wounds. You try to sell me off like inventory at a fire sale. Now I'm the fire. I walked out before he could reply. And I didn't look back. Because once you burn the pedestal they put you on, they're forced to see you eye to eye. 3 weeks later, they tried to steal my team. Brian was quiet now, buried in legal hell and LinkedIn silence. But Dad? He reached out to my lead developer, my marketing director, even my assistant. Offered them more money, flashy titles, promises of real stability. I found out when Lily, my assistant of 4 years, walked into my office with tears in her eyes. They said you'd burn out, she whispered. That you're too emotional to lead. I felt something crack inside me. Not fear, not panic. A calm, cold clarity. They're not coming for me anymore, I said. They're coming for what I've built. Because the thing is, when a woman builds something powerful, they'll either try to own it or destroy it. But I had learned the game. I gathered the team that afternoon. 22 people who had followed me through late nights, ramen lunches, and one shared dream, to build a company that didn't run on ego, but on purpose. I stood in the center of the bullpen and told them everything. No secrets. No spin. They're trying to buy what they couldn't break. If anyone here wants to go with them, I won't hold it against you. No one moved. Not one person. Lily stepped forward first. They don't understand something, Claire. We didn't join a company. We followed you. That night, I rewrote all their contracts. Equity shares. Profit bonuses. Not just promises, power. Because loyalty should never be one-sided. The next morning, I made it public. A press release. Headlines in industry blogs. Female founder offers equity to entire team after attempted corporate sabotage. Startup CEO turns betrayal into expansion. The calls flooded in. I had to hire 2 receptionists just to keep up. And Dad? He sent a short, final email. You've made your decision. You'll regret it. I didn't reply. I was too busy doubling our revenue. They thought they could buy what I built. But I didn't build a business. I built a revolution. And you can't buy what was never for sale. I never planned to return home. But karma has a wicked sense of direction. It started with a phone call from my Aunt Janine, the one who never took sides but always had the family gossip. Claire, your dad's company is in trouble. I almost laughed. Apparently, his biggest client, an international logistics firm, had dropped him. Quietly. Swiftly. After a new digital platform made his services obsolete. A platform that just so happened to be ours. I didn't even know until Janine said the name. My team had onboarded them under a different branch of our firm. The deal had been signed 3 weeks earlier. He was bleeding cash. Laying off staff. Selling one of his vacation homes. I hung up the phone. And I sat in silence. I didn't feel triumph.
Not yet.
I felt still. Like I was standing at the very top of a mountain no one believed I could climb. And then the email came. From Brian. Subject line: "Can we talk?" No arrogance. No demands. Just a calendar link and a 15-minute window. I accepted. Out of curiosity, more than anything. We met at a coffee shop, neutral ground. He looked like someone who had aged 10 years in 6 months. He didn't even order a drink. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said. "I just wanted to say you were right." I waited. I built my life on other people's definitions of success.
But you?
You built your own. And when I tried to take it from you, you didn't just protect it, you grew it. I nodded. That's what women do. We survive the fire, then use the ashes to write blueprints. He smiled, tired but sincere. "Dad's selling the house. I don't think he'll say it, but I think he knows." "Knows what?" I asked. "That he bet on the wrong child." I left him at the table. No bitterness, no grand goodbye. Because my story wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about reclamation. And for the first time, I felt the air shift, not in my favor, but in my ownership. They tried to write my ending, but I learned to hold the pen. Last week, I got an invitation. Thick cream envelope. Gold embossing. Formal font. "You are cordially invited to the retirement gala of Richard B. Langston, my father." I stared at it for a long time, not because I was surprised, but because it was the first thing he'd ever sent me that didn't come with instructions. Just an address.
A date.
And a line at the bottom. "Hope you'll come, Dad." Not Claire. Not "We'd be honored to have you." Just hope. I wore a crimson suit that night. No apologies in my posture. No fear in my heels. The ballroom was full of the same people who once called me the artsy one, the dropout, the embarrassment. Now they stared like they were watching someone walk out of a burning building with diamonds in her hands. I stood near the back. Then they called me up. He had done something no one expected, not even me. He made me the final speaker. I walked to the mic calm. Ready. "My father built a company from ambition," I began. "But he tried to pass it to someone who wore his name, not his vision." I looked directly at him. He didn't flinch. And when he tried to sell my name like property, I didn't fight back with force. I built my own house. And I lit a torch so bright, the world couldn't help but see me. Silence. Then applause. Quiet at first, then rising, like waves. He stood slowly as I stepped down. For a moment, we locked eyes. And then finally he nodded. The smallest bow. But it was enough. I walked out into the night, the city glittering like shattered glass beneath my feet. I don't need their legacy anymore. Because I've built one of my own. A legacy not of obedience, but of vision. Not handed down, but carved out. They called me a failure. A waste. A liability. Now, they call me ma'am. In boardrooms I used to clean. I was never useless. I was just underestimated.